In my 60s, I never thought I'd be standing there, in my own home, with the stinging sensation of betrayal across my cheek, and the silence of my son's gaze weighing heavily on me. I suppose, in hindsight, I should have seen it coming. No one in their right mind would think that a woman like Amelia, so cold and calculating, would fit into our family without causing some kind of rift. But at first, when she married Peter, I hoped no. I prayed that this marriage would soften her, that my son, gentle and earnest Peter, would be able to break through whatever icy walls she had built around herself. But I was wrong. So wrong. I am Caroline Hughes, a mother of two, a widow now for nearly 10 years. I've lived a simple life, one of hard work, a few quiet joys, and my family. My world had been just the three of us after my husband passed. Me, Peter, and my younger daughter, Rachel. We made our own little traditions. We shared a love for Sunday dinners, for garden walks, for laughter that rang through our modest home. But when Peter met Amelia, it all changed. She was different, too sharp, too controlled. She didn't care about our family rituals, our silly inside jokes. She had her own life, her own agenda. And Peter, naive as he was, saw her as perfection. He worshipped her, and I stayed quiet for far too long. The day of the incident, I had no idea what was coming. Peter had invited me over to their new house, another one of his ideas. I suppose Amelia had been on his case about buying a bigger house ever since they married. I knew she wasn't happy with our smaller place. I'd heard the whispers, the little digs, but I tried to be understanding. After all, she was my son's wife, and I had to be respectful, right? I wore my best smile when I arrived at their home that afternoon. I always tried to look my best when I visited, trying to be the pleasant, well-behaved mother-in-law. It had been a few weeks since we'd had any real conversation. I had tried to reach out to Amelia, but she kept her distance, always busy or preoccupied with something. So when Peter said, "Mom, please, come over today. We'll have tea. Amelia's been looking forward to seeing you," I was hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, we could put aside the tension for one afternoon. As soon as I entered their front door, I could feel an invisible weight hanging in the air. Amelia was standing by the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone, her back turned to me. Her posture was stiff, as always. There was something about her that felt wrong, like she was always playing a role, never truly herself. It irked me, but I pushed those thoughts aside. "Hello, love," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "How are you?" She didn't even look up. "Fine," she replied curtly, tapping on her phone with precision. Peter, ever the optimist, tried to ease the tension. "Mom, sit down. Let's catch up." He motioned to the sofa. I took my seat, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I glanced at Amelia again, her eyes still glued to the screen, her fingers tapping away as if I wasn't even in the room. I wanted to say something, anything to break the silence. I wanted to ask her how her day had gone, how she was settling into her new role as my daughter-in-law, but the words didn't come. Every time I looked at her, I felt this deep ache in my chest. I had given her my son, my precious boy, and in return, all I'd received was distance, condescension, and subtle disdain. After a few minutes of awkward silence, Peter went into the kitchen to get the tea. I took the opportunity to speak up. "Amelia, we haven't had a proper chat in ages, have we? I've been thinking, perhaps we could." Before I could finish, she spun around, her eyes narrowing in a way that made my heart race. "What do you want from me, Caroline?" she snapped. The venom in her voice was startling. "You've never liked me. You've never accepted me. All you do is criticize everything I do, everything I say. Well, I'm done with it. I'm done with you." I blinked, stunned. What are you talking about? Oh, don't act innocent." She was almost shouting now, her hands trembling at her sides. "You think I don't see it? The way you look at me, the way you talk about me behind my back, the way you never approved of me from the start. You think you can control Peter, but you can't. He's mine now. And if you think for 1 second you're going to waltz in here like some kind of queen bee, you're wrong. You're nothing. Nothing." My heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Amelia, please." But before I could finish, before I could explain myself or try to make sense of what had just happened, she lunged at me. The slap came out of nowhere, sharp, searing impact across my cheek. The sound of it echoed through the room. I gasped, my hand flying to my face. My cheek stung, but it was the humiliation, the shock, that crippled me. How dare she? How dare she? Peter came rushing in at that moment, his face pale. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice filled with panic. But instead of stepping in to defend me, he just stood there, frozen, as if unable to comprehend what was happening in front of him. Amelia, breathing heavily, stood there for a moment, her fists clenched at her sides. Then, without another word, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I was left in stunned silence, my hand still on my cheek, Peter looking at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mom, I don't know what to say." For the first time in years, I felt completely alone. I had never imagined something like this would happen, but here it was. The woman I had feared, the woman who had come between me and my son, had finally shown her true colors. After Amelia's shocking outburst, I thought I might never hear the truth from Peter again. But when we were finally alone, I realized just how deep the divide between us had grown. The slap echoed in my ears long after Amelia had stormed off. My cheek burned, but what hurt even more was the disbelief in Peter's eyes. He had always been my baby boy, the one I nurtured and protected through all of life's cruelty. But there, in that moment, he wasn't the same man I had raised. He wasn't the Peter I had held close when his father died. He wasn't the son who had once sought my guidance. Instead, he stood there, rooted to the spot, with an expression that was neither shock nor anger. It was a look of confusion, almost as if he didn't know how to process what had just happened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand that he see what I had been trying to tell him for years, that Amelia was not the sweet, innocent woman he thought she was. But I could only stare at him, my heart heavy with hurt. "Mum, I didn't see it coming," Peter said finally, his voice weak, distant. I felt tears threatening to fall, but I held them back. "You didn't see it coming," I repeated, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "Peter, how could you not? I've been telling you for months about her behavior, about the way she treats me, and you turn a blind eye. You let her walk all over me. And today she slapped me in front of you, in front of your own house, and you did nothing." I didn't know what to do. He shot back, his eyes wide with guilt. "She's my wife, Mom. She's everything to me. You don't understand. She's been through a lot." "I understand more than you think," I said bitterly, my hand still holding my throbbing cheek. "I've watched her twist everything you care about into her own little world, Peter. But what really gets to me is that you're so blinded by your love for her that you can't see what's right in front of your face." Peter opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was grasping for something, some explanation, but he couldn't find it. I could see it, the fear, the confusion, the helplessness. He was stuck in the middle of a tug-of-war that he didn't know how to win. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't the first time he had found himself caught between the two women who mattered most to him, but it was the first time it had gone this far. I exhaled, shaking my head, trying to steady myself. "Peter, I don't want to come between you and your wife. I never have. But I can't keep pretending everything's okay when it's not. She's tearing us apart, and I'm not the one causing the rift. It's her. It always has been." Peter looked at me, his eyes filled with so much conflicting emotion. He seemed to shrink in front of me, and my heart twisted in sympathy. I had raised him to be a strong man, to think for himself, to see beyond the surface. But Amelia had done something to him, something I could never undo. She had him wrapped around her finger, and the worst part was, I wasn't sure he even knew it. She doesn't mean it, Mom," he said quietly, as if trying to convince himself more than me. "She's just stressed. She's under pressure. And I know." I cut him off. "No, Peter, that's what you always say. You make excuses for her, but you never once asked me how I felt, how I've been treated. All you see is her, and it's destroying us. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not." Peter lowered his gaze, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of my words had crushed him. I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want to hurt him, but I was already so broken. How could I stand by and let this continue? How could I sit there and watch him, my own flesh and blood, be so utterly blinded by this woman, who had done nothing but belittle me, undermine me, and treat me with contempt? The room was silent for a long while. Peter looked lost, as if the world he had known was crumbling before him. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him, but I was too angry, to hurt. I had been nothing but kind to Amelia, even when she dismissed my attempts at kindness. I had tried to accept her, tried to make her feel like part of our family, but all she had done was push me away, again and again. Finally, Peter broke the silence. Mama, I don't know what to say. I love you, but I love her, too. I don't want to lose either of you. You don't have to choose, I said softly, the words coming out before I had time to think about them. But you need to open your eyes. You need to see what she's doing. You need to see how she's trying to turn you against me. And you need to realize that I'm your mother, Peter. You've known me your whole life. I would never do anything to hurt you. But Amelia, I trailed off, unable to continue. I don't want to fight, Peter said, his voice tinged with exhaustion. I just don't know what to do. I sighed, feeling the weight of the years between us. Neither do I admitted. But I can't keep pretending everything's okay. I won't do it. Peter was quiet for a moment, then finally nodded. I'll talk to her. I promise I'll talk to her. I didn't believe him. I had heard it all before. But at that moment, it didn't matter. I was too tired, too worn out from the constant battle. I had done my part. Now, it was up to him, and I couldn't protect him from the consequences of his choices anymore. As I stood up to leave, I took one last look at Peter. My heart ached for him, but I knew that the path ahead would be a hard one for both of us. After my conversation with Peter, I began to unravel the threads of deception. Amelia's carefully constructed life wasn't as perfect as I had once believed, and I was about to discover something that would shake me to my core. I didn't sleep that night. The ache in my chest was unbearable, the kind that comes when you realize your world has shifted, and you're not sure if you'll ever get back to where you were before. I thought about Peter, how he'd looked at me, torn between his loyalty to his wife and his love for his mother. And I thought about Amelia, the woman who had come into our lives with such promise and poise, only to reveal her true nature, piece by piece. But it wasn't until the next morning that I began to feel the stirrings of something I hadn't anticipated: suspicion. After everything that had happened, the slap, Peter's quiet desperation, and the way Amelia had always kept me at arm's length, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. I couldn't just walk away from the idea that Amelia was manipulating my son in ways I hadn't even realized. The entire morning, I paced around my kitchen, brewing cup after cup of tea, trying to convince myself that I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a bad day, a one-time outburst, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. I had seen the cracks for months, but I had refused to acknowledge them. I had always wanted to keep the peace, to stay out of their marriage, but I couldn't anymore. Not after what happened on by me. I made my decision. I would have to go through Peter's things. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but I had to know. If there was anything that could explain the strange behavior, the manipulation, the coldness of it all, I was going to find it. I wasn't going to let my son be led down this path any longer. I waited until Peter had gone to work the next morning, and then I quietly slipped into his study. The room was neat, orderly, as it always had been. Peter had never been one for clutter, and I had always admired that about him. The shelves were filled with books. The desk was clear except for a few papers, a pen, and a photo frame with a picture of our family on a summer holiday years ago. I paused for a moment, staring at the photo, my heart aching at the memory. I could still remember the days when we were all together, before Amelia came into the picture, when Peter had time for his family and there were no walls between us. But now, everything was so different, and I knew, deep down, that Amelia was at the heart of it. I started by opening the drawers of Peter's desk. At first, there was nothing out of the ordinary: papers, old receipts, some bills, a few pens. But then, at the very back of the drawer, tucked beneath a pile of files, I found it. A letter, yellowed with age, folded neatly in half. The envelope was unmarked, no address or return name. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I picked it up. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Peter's. But this wasn't a letter to anyone I had seen before. The tone was different, almost urgent. I unfolded it, my hands trembling. The words were scrawled in a hurry, and I could almost hear my son's voice in my head as I read it aloud to myself. Amelia doesn't know I'm doing this, but I need to tell you something I should have told you years ago. I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I have to say it. I know you love me, Mom, and I know you've always wanted what's best for me. But there's something you don't know about Amelia. She's hiding something from you, from all of us. I don't know what to do anymore. She's manipulating me in ways I can't even explain. Please, don't blame me. I don't want to lose her, but I'm scared. I'm scared of what she's becoming. I hope one day you'll understand. I read the letter twice, the words burning into my mind. My hands shook as I held the paper, realization dawning on me with every word. My son, my own flesh and blood, had known. He had known all along that something was wrong, that Amelia was pulling the strings, and yet he had never told me. I had always suspected, but I had never wanted to admit it. I had never wanted to believe that the woman Peter had married, woman I had tried so hard to accept, was the source of all this chaos. I stared at the letter for a long time, my heart heavy with a mixture of betrayal and sorrow. I wanted to confront Peter, to scream at him for keeping this from me, for allowing this woman to destroy everything we had built together. But I knew that wasn't the right approach. I needed to be strategic. I needed to have proof, something solid that could not be denied. The letter gave me that. It was the key. It was clear now that Amelia's manipulation was not just psychological, it was something deeper, something far more insidious, and I was determined to expose it, no matter the cost. I slipped the letter back into the drawer, carefully folding it and placing it exactly as I had found it. I couldn't risk leaving any traces of what I had done, but I had a new sense of purpose now. I wasn't going to let Amelia win. I wasn't going to let her tear apart my family any longer. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I made dinner, cleaned the house, and kept my distance from Peter when he returned home. I couldn't look him in the eye, not yet. I needed time to process everything. But as the evening wore on, I realized something important. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I wasn't even fighting for Peter. I was fighting for Rachel too. She had always been so supportive of me, so understanding. But she had distanced herself over the past year. I knew it was because of Amelia, because of the strain she had put on our family. I couldn't let that continue. I had to stand up for all of us. The next day, I decided to confront Amelia. I wasn't sure how I would do it yet, but I knew it was time. I couldn't keep tiptoeing around the truth. As I stood at the front door of their house later that afternoon, I felt a strange sense of calm. I knew what I had to do, and I was ready. The moment I rang the doorbell, I felt the weight of everything pressing down on me. It wasn't just about the slap anymore. It wasn't even just about the cruelty that had been building up between us. It was about truth. It was about justice. And, somehow, it had become about my son too, about the man Peter was becoming, the man I feared he might never be able to escape from under Amelia's control. I waited on the doorstep, the autumn air biting at my skin. I had made up my mind that today, I was going to speak my truth. I wasn't going to back down anymore. For too long, I had kept silent, hoping that things would improve between us, that Amelia would eventually come around. But the truth was, she would never come around. She was too far gone, too consumed with her own agenda, and now I could see it clearly. When the door swung open, I was greeted by Amelia's sharp eyes. Her gaze flickered over me, cool and calculated, before she leaned against the doorframe. There was no smile, no warmth in her eyes. "Caroline," she said, her voice flat. "What a surprise. What do you want?" I wasn't going to let her control this conversation. I stepped forward, pushing down the nerves that threatened to rise in my throat. "I want to talk about what happened yesterday." She raised an eyebrow, and I could tell that she was already bracing for something. "I told you, it was an unfortunate situation. But Peter's made it clear that I don't have to explain myself to you." I swallowed, the bitterness rising in my throat. "No, you don't get to make excuses anymore, Amelia. I've had enough. Yesterday was the last straw. You slapped me. In front of Peter. In front of our home. I won't let you get away with that." She stepped back, crossing her arms over her chest. "Oh, now you want to be dramatic. I didn't slap you, Caroline. I gave you a little tap." "Big difference. A tap," I repeated, incredulous. "You slapped me across the face, and you know it. And you did it because you think you can get away with anything. Because you think Peter will always take your side. Well, you're wrong." Amelia's expression flickered for a moment, something like frustration mixed with annoyance. "You really think you know everything, don't you? You've spent all this time pretending to be the perfect mother, the perfect woman, but you don't know me, Caroline. You don't know anything about me." I felt my pulse quicken. "I know enough. I know enough to see through your lies. I know enough to see that you've been manipulating Peter from the start." She laughed, sharp and hollow. "Manipulating Peter? Oh, that's rich coming from you. You think I've been manipulating him? You, who have been controlling him for his entire life. He's never had a chance. Caroline, not really. You've always kept him in a little box, and now that I'm in the picture, you can't stand it." The words hit me like a slap. For a moment, I was too stunned to respond. She had been planting seeds of doubt for months, twisting Peter's mind into believing that I was the problem, but I wouldn't let her. I couldn't. "Don't you dare try to twist this around," I said, my voice low and firm. "You're the one who's been controlling him. You're the one who's been feeding him lies and creating rifts between us. And now, you've pushed me too far. I'm not going to sit back and let you ruin my family any longer." Amelia's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw something dangerous flash in her gaze. "You think I'm ruining your family?" she asked, her voice icy. "You think I'm the problem? You've never seen it, have you? You've never seen what Peter really is, what he really wants." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and confusion. She stepped closer to me now, her voice a whisper. "You think he's the sweet little boy you raised, don't you? You think he's the same man who needs your approval and guidance, but you've got it all wrong. Peter is weak. He's always been weak, and the moment I came into his life, he found someone who is stronger than you, someone who knows how to control him, and now, he belongs to me." My stomach twisted as I realized what she was saying. You've been controlling him all along," I said, barely able to breathe the words. "That's what you've been doing. You've been manipulating him for your own gain." Amelia smirked. "You're not as stupid as I thought, Caroline. But yes, that's exactly what I've been doing. Peter is mine now, and there's nothing you can do to change that." For a long moment, I stood there, frozen. I didn't know how to respond. Everything I had feared, everything I had suspected, was true. Amelia wasn't just a difficult daughter-in-law, she was a predator. And Peter, my dear, sweet son, was her prey. Finally, I found my voice again. "You're wrong," I said, my voice trembling with both fury and heartbreak. "You can't control him forever. You can't keep him in your grip. He will see through you. He will see what you really are." Amelia's expression flickered for just a second, perhaps a flash of doubt, a crack in her facade, but she quickly masked it. "You think so?" she said, her voice almost mocking. "Well, we'll see, won't we?" At that moment, something in me shifted. I couldn't let her continue to destroy my family. I couldn't let her win. I had to act, and I had to do it now. But what could I do? I was just one woman, standing in front of a woman who had already planted herself so firmly into my son's life. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I don't care what you think, Amelia. You might have Peter for now, but I'm his mother, and I won't stop fighting for him. Not now, not ever." Amelia took a step back, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Then, Caroline, you're a fool. You'll learn soon enough that the more you fight me, the more you'll lose." I stood there for a moment, taking in her words. They hung in the air like a challenge, but I wasn't backing down. Not anymore. I had everything to lose, but I wasn't going to give up on Peter. Not without a fight. In the days that followed, I found myself walking a tightrope, balancing between a mother's instinct to protect her son and the harsh reality that he was slipping further away from me. I had hoped that Amelia's reveal would be the turning point, the wake-up call Peter needed to see his wife for what she truly was. But instead, I felt a deeper rift forming between us. He had barely spoken to me since that only a brief, strained phone call to apologize for the way things had gone, but it felt hollow. I knew that his mind was consumed by his loyalty to Amelia. It was clear now that the damage had been done. I was no longer the confidant I used to be. I was no longer the first person Peter would turn to. I was just his mother, the woman who didn't understand his wife. And the worst part was, I was starting to feel like an outsider in my own family. I had expected that Peter might eventually come to see the truth, that he would question what Amelia had told him, that he would recognize the manipulation, but he never did. Instead, he seemed more resolute, more defensive of her than I had ever seen him. It was as though the words I had spoken, the warnings I had given, had bounced off him completely. I knew that I had to do more. I had to find a way to get through to him, but I couldn't do it directly, not now. Amelia was always present, always watching, always controlling. She had become a constant shadow over our family, and it was clear that nothing I said or did would get through to Peter if she was around. One evening, I found myself sitting alone in my living room, staring at a family photo on the mantel. It was from a holiday years ago. Peter and Rachel, both laughing, full of life. I could almost hear their voices, their carefree chatter, echoing in the room. I longed for those days, when things were simpler. before Amelia had come along and clouded everything. I knew I couldn't give up on him, not when there was still a chance to reach him. But how? How could I break through the walls Amelia had built around him? And even if I did, would he even listen? That's when I remembered the letter Peter had written, the one I had found hidden away in his desk. It was clear that he had been conflicted, that he had seen through Amelia's facade, even if he hadn't admitted it to himself. But there was one thing I had missed when I first read it. The way he had mentioned something about the truth, something he had never spoken about before. He had written that he was scared of what Amelia was becoming. But what if there was more to the story? What if there was something else he had hidden, something deeper? The thought gnawed at me for days. I couldn't just let this go. Peter was hiding something, and I had to find out what it was. If I could uncover whatever it was that Amelia was doing, I could finally put an end to the poison she had injected into our family. I waited until Peter was at work again, and then drove over to their house. I wasn't sure what I would find, but I knew I had to try. I had been through Peter's desk once, but I hadn't searched anywhere else. And I couldn't shake the feeling that Amelia was hiding something, too. She wasn't as untouchable as she thought. When I arrived, I was careful not to let Amelia know I was there. She had been at home the last time I visited, but today, the house seemed eerily quiet. I crept inside, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew this was risky, but I didn't have any other choice. I made my way to their bedroom, the one place I knew I could search without raising suspicion. I had been in here before, but today I was looking with a new purpose. I started with the bedside table, opening drawers and rummaging through papers. Most of it was just junkled receipts, bills, a few makeup items. But then, near the back of the drawer, I found something that made my breath catch. It was a journal, a small, leather-bound book tucked away beneath a pile of magazines. The moment I saw it, I knew it wasn't just a regular journal. I knew that it was something important, something Amelia had kept hidden. I opened it carefully, scanning the pages. The first few entries were mundane Amelia's thoughts about the house, about her day-to-day life. But then, I saw something that stopped me cold. It was a passage about Peter, a description of how she had first won him over, how she had slowly worked her way into his life, making sure he was completely dependent on her. I knew Peter would be easy to manipulate. The entry read, "All it took was a few well-placed words, a few gentle nudges in the right direction, and he was mine. He doesn't even realize it yet, but he will soon. He needs me more than he knows, and I will make sure of it." I could hardly believe my eyes. This wasn't just manipulation, it was calculated. She had been playing Peter like a puppet from the very beginning. She had carefully engineered everything to make him dependent on her, to make sure he never saw through her lies. And now, after everything, she had succeeded. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had been right all along. She wasn't just a cold woman. She was dangerous. She had been manipulating him for years, and I had been blind to it. I closed the journal quickly and slipped it back into the drawer, my mind racing. This was the evidence I needed. This was what I could use to show Peter the truth. I wasn't going to let her control him anymore. Not after this. But I also knew that things had reached a breaking point. The question now wasn't just whether Peter would believe MIT, was whether I could get through to him before it was too late. As I left their house, I felt a sense of resolve settle over me. I wasn't going to let Amelia win. Not this time. Spent the next few days in a fog of uncertainty. I had the journal, the proof that Amelia had been manipulating Peter for years, but I wasn't sure how to use it. How could I present it to Peter without pushing him further away? The relationship between us was hanging by a thread, and if I made one wrong move, it could snap completely. I knew that I couldn't confront him directly, not yet. He was too defensive, too blind to the truth. I needed someone on my side. Someone who could help me make him see what I had been trying to tell him all along. And then, like a beacon of hope, someone came into the picture. Rachel, my younger daughter, the one who had been the most distant in recent months, called me one evening, her voice laced with a quiet desperation. "Mum, I need to talk to you. It's about Peter and Amelia." My heart skipped a beat. Rachel had always been my rock, the one person who understood me. She had grown close to Peter too. And when Amelia had come into the picture, Rachel had been quietly supportive of my suspicions, but I hadn't realized how much she had been observing until now. "I don't know how to say this," Rachel said, her voice low, as though she was afraid someone might overhear, "but I think Amelia's got something on Peter. She's got him wrapped around her little finger. Mum, I don't think he even realizes it. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I know, sweetheart. I've been telling him that for months, but he won't listen. He's so consumed with her, he can't see what's happening. I know, Rachel said, her voice filled with frustration. I've tried talking to him, but he's so defensive of her. He's not the brother I grew up with. He's different now, Mum. He's not the same person. That's when it hit me. Rachel had been watching all along. She had seen the same things I had. And now, we were on the same side. But how could we use that to our advantage? I found something, I said quietly, not sure how much to reveal. A journal, Amelia's journal. It has everything in it, everything she's been doing to control Peter. Rachel gasped. You found it. What's in it? What does it say? I have proof, I said, my voice heavy with the weight of the words. She's been manipulating him for years. She's been using him, and I think it's time he knows the truth. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear Rachel processing everything I had said. Mum, you have to show him. You have to make him see it. But please, be careful. You know how she is. She won't go down without a fight. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I know, but I can't keep standing by while she destroys everything. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about Peter. And it's about our family. Rachel's voice softened. I'll help. We can do this together. The next day, Rachel came over to my house. She was determined, just like I was. We had a plan, and it was the only one we had left. We would show Peter the journal, but we wouldn't confront him alone. We needed to be strategic. If we showed him the truth, we had to make sure he couldn't deny it. We had to make sure he couldn't brush it off as some misunderstanding. Peter and Amelia were coming over for dinner that evening, and we decided it was the perfect opportunity. Amelia had insisted on coming, despite the tension that still lingered between us. Peter, ever the peacemaker, had agreed, thinking it might help smooth things over, but neither of them knew what we had planned. As Rachel and I prepared the meal, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what was about to happen. This wasn't just dinner. This wasn't just another awkward family gathering. This was a showdown. The truth was about to be laid bare, and there was no turning back. When Peter and Amelia arrived, everything felt off. Amelia was her usual cold self, and Peter was unusually quiet. I could tell he was trying to avoid eye contact with me, but I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. We sat down to eat, and the conversation was strained at best. I watched as Peter tried to engage in small talk, but Amelia was too busy with her phone, barely looking up from it. Rachel was on edge, and I could feel the tension building. It was like a powder keg, ready to explode at any moment. After the main course, as we sat around the table, Rachel looked at me, her eyes filled with determination. I nodded. It was time. Peter, we need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. He looked up, surprised. What about, Mum? It's about Amelia, I said, not beating around the bush. About what she's been doing to you. About the controls she's been exerting over you. I know you don't want to believe it, but I need you to hear the truth. Amelia's head snapped up, and for the first time that evening, she looked genuinely startled. What are you talking about? She demanded, her voice laced with venom. I have proof, I said quietly, as Rachel passed the journal to Peter. Read it. It's all in there. Peter stared at the journal in his hands, the weight of the moment sinking in. He hesitated, glancing at Amelia, who was now seething with anger. But he opened it anyway, slowly turning the pages, his face growing more and more unreadable as he read. I watched as his expression shifted, his eyes widening, his hands trembling slightly. Amelia was watching him, fury bubbling just beneath the surface, but I could tell that the truth was sinking in. For the first time, Peter looked up at me not with the defensiveness he had shown before, but with something closer to confusion, and, dare I say, fear. What is this, Mom? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Is this really how she's been treating me? I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The journal spoke for itself. Amelia's facade was starting to crumble. I could see the panic in her eyes now. She was losing control, and she knew it. I told you, Peter, I said, my voice steady. She's been manipulating you. She's been controlling everything, from the way you think to the way you live. You've been under her thumb for years, and you didn't even realize it. Peter's face was a study of emotions, anger, hurt, betrayal. It was clear he was struggling to process everything, but I could see the cracks in his armor starting to appear. He looked at Amelia, then back at me. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice hoarse. Why didn't you show me this before? I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The truth had already begun to hit him. He was seeing through the lies, seeing through Amelia's control. The walls between us were finally starting to crumble. The room was thick with tension as Peter stood there, the journal still clutched in his hands. He had barely moved, his face pale, his expression unreadable. Amelia, on the other hand, was visibly shaking with rage. I had expected her to lash out, but I hadn't anticipated just how far she would go to keep her hold on Peter. For a moment, it felt as though time had frozen. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, as though the very air itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Peter was still holding the journal, his fingers white from gripping it so tightly. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the confusion, the anger, the hurt. He glanced up at Amelia, who was now standing, her face twisted in fury. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice came out in a harsh, strangled whisper. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat, her eyes darting between me and Peter. "You think that just because you've read a few pages of my private thoughts, you know everything about me. You have no idea what I've been through, what I've sacrificed for this family." Peter's face darkened as he turned toward her. "What you've sacrificed? Amelia, you've been lying to me. You've been manipulating me for years, and you've turned me against my own mother. I can't even believe I didn't see it sooner." Amelia's eyes flashed with something darker, something almost dangerous. "Peter, don't be naive. You think she's telling you the truth. You think your mother is the perfect angel she pretends to be. You don't know her like I do. You don't know what she's capable of." I could feel the anger rising in me now, but I kept my voice steady. "I don't need to make up lies, Amelia. I'm not the one who's been keeping secrets. You've been playing a game, using him to get what you want. And now you're angry because the truth is finally coming out." Her laugh was bitter, almost a mockery. "You think this is about power, Caroline. You think this is about getting what I want. You've been trying to control Peter for years, making him feel guilty for everything. You've never once let him live his own life, and you've never truly accepted me. And now you think you can just waltz in here with your little journal and tear everything apart." Peter's fists clenched at his sides. "I've been blind. I've let you manipulate me, let you keep me in the dark. And for what? So you could control every part of my life. I never wanted to control you." Amelia's voice broke for a moment, but the venom quickly returned. "I wanted to protect you from her, from the woman who has never let you go, who has never let you make your own choices. She's never wanted you to be your own man, Peter. She's always wanted you to stay her little boy, and she's used every trick in the book to keep you under her thumb." Peter shook his head, his gaze never leaving Amelia. "You've twisted everything. My mum loves me, and she's always been there for me. She's never wanted to control me. You've been the one pulling the strings, and I didn't see it until now." Amelia's face twisted in disbelief. "You're siding with her, after everything I've done for you, after everything I've given you." Her voice rose with each word, and I could see her beginning to unravel. "You can't just throw all of that away. You can't just turn your back on me." "I'm not turning my back on you, Amelia." Peter's voice was low now, steady, as though he had finally found his center. "But I can't keep living in a lie. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when I know it's not." For a moment, there was a heavy silence between them. I could see Amelia's anger turn into something darker, more calculated. She stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Peter's, and for a split second, I thought she might strike out at him too. But then her gaze shifted to me, and I saw the cold fury in her eyes. "This isn't over," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you've won. You think this is the end of it. You have no idea what I'm capable of, both of you. You'll regret this. You'll both regret it." I stepped forward then, my own anger rising, but I held my ground. "No, Amelia. This is over. You've lost. You can't control him anymore, and you can't keep trying to turn him against his own family. This is the last time you get to play your game." For a moment, it seemed like the weight of everything that had happened, everything that had been said, hung in the air. Amelia's face was a study in fury, but there was something else there too. Defeat. I could see it in the way her shoulders slumped, the way her fists unclenched. She wasn't going to get what she wanted this time. Peter looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Clarity. There was no longer any confusion, no longer any hesitation. He had made his choice. "I'm sorry, Mum," he said softly, his voice breaking. "I should have listened to you. I should have seen it. I'm so sorry I hurt you." My heart swelled with a mixture of relief and pain. "Peter, I never wanted to hurt you. I only wanted what was best for you. But I've always loved you, no matter what." Amelia stood there, her arms crossed, staring at the floor. She said nothing more. There was no argument left in her, no anger left to fuel her. She was defeated. But then, just as we thought the confrontation was over, Peter's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression changing. "It's a message from Amelia," he said, his voice flat. He looked at her, his brow furrowing. "She's left. She's gone." I stood there, in the middle of the room, watching as Peter looked down at the phone. Amelia had made her exit. And for the first time in years, I felt like we had a chance to rebuild. The silence in the room felt different now. There was no more tension, no more looming threat. It was just Peter and me, sitting across from each other, the space between us filled with a strange mixture of relief and sadness. Amelia was gone, just like that. She had left, taking nothing with her but the wreckage she had caused. Her departure wasn't dramatic, no last words, no grand gestures. She had simply packed her things and walked out of the door, leaving Peter with nothing but the ghost of the woman he had once believed he loved. I had expected a sense of victory, a rush of triumph at the idea that she was finally out of our lives, but all I felt was an overwhelming sense of loss of time, of the relationship I'd once had with my son, and the family I thought we were. I looked at Peter, my son, the man he had become, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't know how to move forward. Peter seemed lost in his thoughts, his gaze distant. He hadn't said much since Amelia left. He had seemed a little shaken, rightfully so, but there was something else there too, a quiet determination. It was as though he had shed the last remnants of her control, and he was finally seeing clearly. "I never saw it," he said quietly, breaking the silence. "I never saw what she was doing to me. I never saw how far she'd gone to keep me in her grip, and now that I've seen it, I don't know how to feel. How could I have let myself get so blinded?" I understood the feeling, the guilt, the regret, the shame. It's what we all feel when we realize that someone we love has been taken from us in a way we didn't understand. But I also knew that there was no point in dwelling on it anymore. We couldn't change what had happened. We could only focus on the future. "You couldn't see it, Peter, because she was good at what she did," I said gently, my voice steady. "You weren't weak. She was just manipulative. And sometimes, the people we love the most can pull the wool over our eyes without us even realizing." Peter nodded, but there was still something hanging in his eyes, a sadness that I couldn't shake. I reached across the table, placing my hand over his. "You don't have to carry the weight of this on your own. We'll get through it, together. We've always been a family, and we always will be." He looked up at me then, his eyes finally meeting mine, with something I hadn't seen in so long: trust. "I'm sorry, Mum. I know I've hurt you. I've been so focused on trying to fix things with her that I lost sight of what really mattered. You matter. You always have." My heart ached. I had always known how much Peter loved me, but to hear him say it out loud after everything we'd been through was a balm to my weary soul. "I've always been here for you, Peter. I always will be." We sat in silence for a while, both of us simply absorbing the weight of what had happened. It was over. Amelia was gone. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The damage she had done both to Peter and to our family was deep. There were years of manipulation, of hurt to untangle, but we would do it together. Slowly, piece by piece, we would rebuild. The next few weeks were difficult. Peter took some time away from work, trying to process everything. He and I spent a lot of time talking, really talking. Not just about Amelia, but about the things that had been left unsaid for so long. There were tears. There were apologies. There were moments of quiet understanding. We had lost so much to Amelia's influence, but we were slowly finding our way back to each other. Rachel, too, was a constant support. She had always been the glue that held our family together, even when Amelia had tried to tear us apart. The three of us began to reconnect in ways we hadn't in years, sharing dinners, taking walks, just being present for one another. It wasn't perfect, and it didn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. In the months that followed, we also found ourselves reflecting on the lessons we had learned. Peter had come to understand the power of his own voice, the importance of standing up for himself, of recognizing when something wasn't right. He had finally seen the truth about Amelia, but he had also seen something else, that he was stronger than he had thought, and that was the beginning of his healing. For me, the biggest lesson was in forgiveness. I had held on to my anger for so long, letting it fester and burn. But as I saw Peter heal, I realized that holding on to resentment only kept me stuck in the past. I didn't have to forget what had happened, but I could choose to let go of the bitterness. I could choose to rebuild, not just my relationship with Peter, but my own sense of peace. As the seasons changed, so did our lives. Amelia was no longer a part of our world, and I began to feel the weight of her absence lifting. Peter and I slowly redefined our relationship, not as mother and son, bound by guilt and secrets, but as two people who had gone through something difficult and had come out stronger on the other side. It wasn't easy. There were days when I still felt the sting of the betrayal, the hurt that Amelia had caused. But in the end, I knew that justice had been served not through grand gestures or punishment, but through the quiet, steady rebuilding of trust and love. And as for Amelia, well, I learned a long time ago that karma doesn't always show up in the ways we expect. Some people's actions speak for themselves. Amelia had lost Peter's trust, and in the end, that was the greatest consequence she could face. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to see her suffer. The real justice came in the form of a family healing, a son coming into his own, and a mother who had never stopped loving him, even when it seemed like everything was lost. And with that, we moved forward together. Author's note: in this story, I explored the quiet but powerful way in which truth can unravel the most toxic of relationships. Sometimes, the hardest part is seeing the manipulation for what it is and finding the strength to confront it. The story reflects the power of forgiveness, self-empowerment, and the strength of family bonds. Justice doesn't always mean confrontation or punishment. It's often found in personal healing and reclaiming control of one's life.